Okay. So I'm in a another debate. I'm listening at least. I may interject, but it's kind of interesting. These are some good debaters, very articulate. So we'll get back into it. If I had my way, I was going to argue with Moody here, but it's not happening. That seems to collapse like this. I agree. But you're the one. But what? Why is there a maintenance of the contingency, Josh? Why is there's a maintenance? Mm. But the part of the discussion that Jack may have missed, though, was that minus minds in the future, or minus people to interpret the proposition, the contingency is also not entailed. And he was trying to bring that up. Like, to what extent could you talk about a proposition, meaning the maintenance of the contingency is what's at issue? So if the contingency of minds is absent in the future, then the referent of what things are is also absent. I hmm. Well, see, well, Jack Angstrack is a tough, argumentative, and very, very knowledgeable guy, by the way, for the viewer. But now everyone's kind of off topic. Hey, Jack, I was dying. Well, Jack, I wanted to give you a scenario and see if you could analyze this as a proposition, right? Such as the proposition it's raining outside, right? And to start out with the idea, well, somewhere on the planet it's raining outside, but then we bring it to a locality, right? Or a local observation, right? So let's say I'm having this expression with a lover of mine. Hey, look, it's raining outside, right? So the proposition is pointing to something and hence has a truth value, right? But then let's say it rains on a fairly regular basis, and we find it uncanny that it's raining outside, and we're making love with this, and then at one point along the way in our time hanging out, the phrase "it's raining outside," whether or not it is actually raining outside or not, is now more of a statement on saying, I don't want you to go. Right. So, and she picks this up, right? When I just say, hey, it's raining outside. At that point, what kind of proposition am I using there, or has it at that point migrated to merely a statement? Meaning, if she's interpreting the proposition, it's raining outside, now as having a meta meaning, meaning I don't want you to leave, right? As if leaving was the reason I was saying, well, you don't want to leave, it was raining outside, right? In the earlier case. I'm just wondering, how would the proposition hold up if the interpretation of the proposition, whether or not it's true or false, whether or not it holds a true or false ability to it at that point? How do you describe that kind of proposition? Does that make sense? Well, it's not an inf. Well, it's more of an. Well, I'm still okay. So you're saying it's an indirect speech act. He's saying it's an inference. The proposition. Okay, well, it's fine. I mean, I don't mind that you try to place this into a categorical, but I was curious of Jack's thoughts on it. The thing is it is not necessarily indirect speech act, meaning the intentionality of my saying it might have shifted, but it would require her interpretation of it to be interpreted minus the truth or falsity of the proposition. And so you're saying a proposition, Josh, can retain a truth or falsity, but then it migrates to merely an indirect speech act. Is that right? Look, see, this is the problem with Jack, is he avoids me. I think my question illustrates this. Dogmatism. Yeah. Well, but hang on, before Jack, my illustration. I don't know whether or not I illustrated enough about how the proposition's interpretability migrates it away from the constraints of the categorical proposition, such that it becomes what Josh said, an indirect speech act. Yet it still retains a referent aspect. And so I'm saying, if is this not a case that is intelligible, right, that we could analyze, and that it would that you would have a response to in terms of how a proposition might lose its category and still. If I'm being unclear, let me know. If you're not grasping what I'm saying, I'm just wondering if anyone else. It's dogmatic. He's being dogmatic about this. How long do you have, Jack? That is precisely what he's doing, and an example of this would be if one is driving into a new location and they see a house. The idea that they're believing that they're seeing a house may come to their mind. Proposition may come to their mind, but the apprehension of that house as a house is not justified by anything, right? Meaning it's organismally justified, it's historically justified, the senses register it, but that's hardly the justification that Jack's asking for. And yet that is the example. That is an example. You don't go and test everything that you're apprehending. You utilize the abductive inference and not a deductive, and not the preferred inductive deductive reduction to epistemology at this point. And so I'm agreeing with the other guy. Not, it doesn't necessarily have to collapse into induction. It's the best lot that then you can apply induction to. No, that's mistaken. It's not probabilistic. You're trying to conflate probabilism with abduction in the purest sense in this case. And so it's not a matter of you're probably witnessing a house as a house that you've never seen. It, No, well, abduction is an inference on the best of a bad lot that you have to work with. It what my, no, it's not merely induction, right? Because it's a non-justified lot that you're working with. Data senses, like I said, you're not, if you go to a new area and you're observing something new and you sense it as a house, that is not an inductive process. That is apprehended. It's not even necessarily justified. It's only justified because you previously already knew what a house was. So you're not using induction, you're apprehending it at that moment, right? And then later, excuse I know you're not, but this is what I meant by trying to migrate this, kind of migrate a new philosophy into the classical philosophy. Like that's my goal, but at the same time, I'm not. Hang on. Just let me state this. I am not. I am utilizing the definition off of the Stanford Encyclopedia of Abduction, and if you're trying to force a probability, it's anyway. Go ahead. It's hardly ridiculous because these are the exceptions in the margin to Jack's. No, there's a distinction. Well, and I want to interject. Okay, and my response to the person that said they think it's absurd that it's not a probabilistic thing, it's the same way that one says, "Hey, how much do you love your wife?" "Oh, I love her this much," as opposed to saying, "Oh, I love her at this moment at about 85." No, I'd say 84%. Right? The projection of a probabilistic field onto something that's emotive, that's non-measurable, is the absurdity, and that's the distinction I'm trying to make. To as far as taking these moments, that's where abduction as an inference takes a predominance. It it's like if I know that I hate my wife more than I love my wife, if I know that I hate my wife more than I love it, then I could say I know that much without exacting a 50-50 field of probability. No, I'm just saying there's been a distinction between the probabilistic field. There's a distinction, and I think it's called Pistol. I don't have it pulled up, but there's a distinction between the projection of a probabilistic field on an inductive data as opposed to the necessity, the maintenance of saying all of this is necessarily probabilistic. Because when you bring in the probabilistic, then it ties into induction. Then you can find that connection. But the exceptional case, the case I'm trying what am I even saying at this point? Meaning some things in a lot you could say, well, I'm guessing the majority of that. I'm guessing a certain percentage of something on an abstract, right? And what I'm suggesting is that when you see a new house and you're driving by, you aren't doubting the house at some percentage of field. As a matter of fact, the majority of the time you're not employing a doubt, and you're not employing a probabilistic element to your justification of that house, right? You're simply knowing that it is a house because it's like an a posteriori justification, where Jack's dogma is always a posteriori, a previous or an ongoing justification. And in this particular sense, you simply apprehend it. And then if you think about it, it's a posteriori, after the fact, or you're doing it during that moment. And so this is a real human thing that occurs that doesn't fall within the framework of Jack's argument. What I'm trying to do is I could predict from one house that there's going to be more houses over the end or something like that based on a landscape, right? I could make a predictive model. But if I'm not busy building a model and I'm just simply observing a house, that would fall within, or houses. I'm not doubting their houses. I'm not making a proposition about the houses. My organism already knows what a house is, meaning I know what a house is. My organism, my eyes are sensing the house, right? It's like ancillary data that you already know that you're not justifying, so it falls into latency. It falls under the realm of scrutiny. and that even that latency has a particular name in philosophy that I don't have readily at hand to speak. But I'm trying to I'm trying. This is where I've been trying to drive Jack for some time, but I noticed that Jack doesn't go here. Jack says what Jack says, and he doesn't say what he says, and then other people come into play as not interference. But anyway, but my point is that that's why I was sorry. What I meant by that is that it was the other person. Well, no, what I mean by that is Jack won't defend the opposite, and then he'll say, "I don't understand a situation where that would make sense." So I try to, my first reaction was, "How much time do you have, Jack? Like, let's paint a scenario that humans involve themselves in, such that I can say, right here is an example. What do you think about that exceptional example?" Right? But then other people come into play, and then when the other guy that said, "Well, Jack, it just seems like you're saying that you're not willing to take up this argument." And he said, and then Jack's response was kind of a reiteration. "Yeah, I'm not. I am focusing on this argument," which then becomes Jack being dogmatistic or dogmatic, right? Meaning that he's simply maintaining a hold instead of considering a realm of further argumentation. That's what I mean by Jack is saying what Jack is saying, and he's not saying what he's not saying. He's holding a position dogmatically. I think well, my thoughts are that Jack maps the majority of his argumentation because he's got a very good eidetic memory. He maps a lot of authors that he's read, but on the fly, he's probably less apt to consider or allow consideration of these things because it's not a mirror of an author that he's picked up in his thought. And I'm not saying Jack doesn't have his own thoughts. I'm just saying he seems more reserved to flamboyantly cast them because he doesn't want anyone like recording something that would be not I don't know, or he doesn't want to have somebody evidence something against his all the backing that Jack has in Discord and as his ethos in philosophy. So he's difficult to nail down. He's difficult to allow these considerations. And then when I do try to bring in an argument, there's a lot of sideline other voices that come in that kind of support him. And in the case before Josh, the other guy that I was talking about that said, "So you're not going to consider this," he'll re-up on the argument, and so that is the dogmatism again. But I don't know whether or not I answered your question. I think I did. No, I mean Jack, when he's open to it, and if he wants to, he will. I just notice when he prefers to be quiet or leave a discussion, or when other people come in to supplement his position. It's more of an analysis of Jack as a personality when confronted with these certain extrinsic arguments. And so you asked me what I thought, and so I was just giving my notion of what I think. And notice that I didn't say, well, I think Jack is 90% of the time thinking this way. I'm not using some probabilistic projection onto Jack, right? When I'm just simply projecting a notion onto Jack at this point. Now, this can I'm certain it's not true, my story. It's not true, meaning I think I have a portion of Jack's field that I'm describing appropriately, right? There is something that I think I've probably described that others of you would maybe agree with and maybe not quite agree with. But so there's a field of intersection that is agreeable, but there's not a projected field, right? So then if we put that out, and we'll call this the Jack category, right? Then to analyze the Jack category, then does not you can apply probabilities on it. Well, it's probably 80% accurate. But I just say no. Just listen to Jack. Take Jack on, right? And such that Jack is the new abduction. Right, right. Well, the yeah, observations and interactions, and this is my point though: is the epistemological frame in philosophy is predominant as opposed to the phenomenological frame taking predominance, and the phenomenological frame and the epistemological frame, those two also are intersectional. And so my point is that the idea of questing to making a statement, making a hypothesis about the statement, coming to a conclusion is put on the back burner. That's not what I'm doing. I'm describing things in human linguistic, like these are things that I experience phenomenologically. I believe we all experience these things phenomenologically, but we're not indexing them properly in philosophy because the epistemological frame takes predominance, and hence then if the argument is from phenomenological abduction of a house going by, or Jack in this instance, my datum set of Jack, my beliefs about Jack. As soon as I say beliefs about Jack, then we know that we're in also the epistemological field, right? But just listening to Jack, witnessing Jack, absorbing Jack, right? Jack is himself a phenomena, the Jack category in this case, right? And so all I'm saying is philosophy, if philosophy is not going to describe hang on, just let me finish. Just let me say one thing. Just let me say one thing. Just let me finish this one sentence, right? So here's the one, just no, but this is the one sentence. I'm just going to say this. If philosophy is not describing human and linguistic and actual phenomena that is occurring, then it's not going to do a robust job. It's failing, right? It's failing. So, okay, that's what I was going to say. I'm, I'm not denying that you can look at it in terms of a consequence. When I see a house as I'm traveling by it, I presume that it has a back side, right? The consequent of seeing this side is that I'll see that side. I could say that, right? Meaning I'm not. What I'm saying is, but the phenomenon. Well, meaning you could what right. I'm not denying that you could put it in that way. I'm not even denying there's authors that want to reduce abduction to to deduction. Right. I'm not saying that's not there. That's present. I'm just saying I disagree with that particular reduction of reducing abduction into deduction, because of these examples I'm saying, right? They don't like it, like the field of apprehension. Okay. Sorry, that's what I meant to respond to. I meant to say induction. Yes. I mean, the majority, like a lot of philosophy is catching people on using improper terminology and the sort. Right. Well, I know. I appreciate that because when I approach a house from one side and I see three sides of, let's say, a cubed house, and then I drive by the other side, it was, you if I want to employ possibility at that point, I could say, well, it's possible that there were only three walls on that cube, right? But I assume without justification, unless some abnormality in my environmental field. Yeah, just like I believe the majority of us assume that. And then we assume a new house that we've never seen before has these things, and we do it without justification at the moment. We do it without future justification. What well, what I'm saying is this: there's a part of the human experience that you're just gazing at a field of datum, right? Your mind's eye and the linguistics do not approach every bit of datum within that field. And so if this house is something that you witness as you're going by, just like any other tree or any other item where your mind is not busy. Yeah, that's my point, is because of prior experience coming into language, knowing that that's what we call a house and knowing the basic factors of house, you use a prior experience that then falls into a latency of the mind, right? Its reemergence then reemerges back into the field of whether or not you're going to pick it apart as inductive, deductive, adductive, or throw any other philosophical considerations about it. But I'm saying at that moment that that thing is going by, that is part of the human experience. And hence that should be included in philosophical indexing. And I believe that indexing is more on the phenomenological realm, exclusive, away from, excluding the epistemic domain, right? Meaning you only shore up the epistemic domain after the facts. That's you don't need you the nature of abduction is you don't get the more information that you need. It's why it's called a bad lot. You got a bad lover. Yes. or general association to affirm a consequence. If you see someone with a bad liver, you presume that they were a drinker, but you don't have any more information. Maybe they have the bad liver there, but you're left with that. So if you want to say, well, I'm going to induce, go ahead. I didn't hear your discussion last week. You guys have it. But the but if you had if you believed you left your keys in your bedroom and you had good reason that it wasn't in the other rooms in your house, you're using an induction like, hey, well, I came from that room, that's where I believe it is, they're necessarily there. And but you're not, you can project a probabilistic field onto that. Well, I'm 90% assured, but then the projection of the probabilistic field becomes itself something you could put a probability on, an indefinite meta. Anyway, no, what well, what I'm saying is this. Yeah, see, cement, you're good. You're here, man. Was this is just that or concrete is the is that is that you're using an inductive process, but you're not employing a probabilistic a probability to it. It's just Well, Pogan, if all you're going to argue is for the ivory tower, then all you're doing is being a police guard of that ivory tower, a gatekeeper of it. He's bringing up a good point. You don't know what any of that means. You said the normative. Well, at this point, just to whoever's my YouTube viewer, I put the general thing on mute. Yeah, I think I've stated. I think that's kind of the argument that you heard me make over the last 50 minutes that I wanted to make this video about. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it short. If you have any questions or comments, leave it below. Thanks.